Okay, so we're talking about following Jesus and who he is and what this looks like in our life of discipleship. But do you know, if you had to make a table of people who responded well to Jesus versus people who didn't, do you have any idea what that table will look like? Well, let me tell you that on the side of those who responded well to Jesus are, oddly enough, exactly the kind of people who many of us work really hard to keep away from our churches. Because the kinds of people that Jesus had positive life-changing encounters with were more often than not tax collectors, sinners, sexually immoral people. Now, don't get me wrong, when it comes to this, Jesus didn't compromise on what he believed their lives should look like if they followed him, and yet he was still able to have such gracious, life-giving encounters with them, right? The weird thing is about the other side, the side of people who did not have positive encounters with Jesus, at the top of the list, on repeat in so many of the stories, were the religious leaders of Jesus' time. Now, this is super interesting in and of itself, but it also begs the question about how we see Jesus and how we reflect Jesus, and we kind of covered this last week. But on this, Timothy Keller in his book Prodigal God says the following: Jesus' teaching consistently attracted the irreligious while offending the Bible-believing religious people of his day. However, in the main, our churches today do not have this effect. The kind of outsiders Jesus attracted are not attracted to contemporary churches, even our most avant-garde ones. We tend to still draw conservative, buttoned-down, moralistic people. The licentious and liberated, or the broken and marginal, avoid church. That can only mean one thing. If the preaching of our ministers and the practice of our parishioners do not have the same effect on people that Jesus had, then we must not be declaring the same message that Jesus did. And that is so convicting. Now, depending on where this lands with you, it's super easy to say, well, I'm not like that. I'm not a Pharisee. But as much as we invite the Lord to sometimes expose our sin, I believe because of exactly how dangerous this Pharisaical religious spirit can be, we too also need to be willing to invite the Lord to highlight where there are parts of my heart which are more like the heart of the Pharisee than the heart of Jesus. So today in your groups, you're going to study a passage which really kind of exposes this religious heart. And I'm trusting that the Lord would use this to kindly help us see if, where, and how we are more like the Pharisee than we want to. And also how our religious sides too can find grace in the love and presence of Christ.